lovely people, and welcome back to my channel. Or if it's your first time here, if we haven't met yet, welcome especially. I'm Sally and I'm so glad you stopped by. I'm currently sitting on the floor of my new house. I'm very excited to be here, but I say that because I promise there is more interactive cooking, lifestyle style content coming out soon. But we are in the thick of moving and getting settled, finding our rhythms, and just kind of getting our feet under us. So it's another sit down chatty video for today. But I have a really fun one coming out for you next week. We're going to be talking a little bit more about lymphatic drainage, doing some foam rolling. It's going to be a tutorial. This was requested on last week's video. So if you wonder why we would do that, go check it out. But anyways, foam rolling is very beneficial for your lymphatic drainage and for myofascial release. And I actually, when I was teaching fitness, used to teach a roll and release class that was amazing when it comes to those two things. So I'm going to be sharing some of that with you. But for today, we're talking about something that has come up in conversation just with some of you guys who've reached out on Instagram or similarly a few times recently. And that is when pro-metabolic isn't working. Some of you have reached out and said that, you were really excited about the principles behind a pro-metabolic lifestyle. And so you went full force, tried to implement this, but you just weren't feeling well. Essentially, you're having a reaction when you make this transition. And that's what I want to address, because there are three things in particular that I see happening pretty frequently that I think can kind of sabotage one's success when it comes to adopting this lifestyle. And I do just want to preface by saying this lifestyle, at least the version of it that I am promoting, is by no means one size fits all. Each and every one of us is a bio-individual being. So we have our own factors and circumstances that are contributing to our health, contributing to how we function. However, at the same time, there is a way in which our physiology was designed to work. It's a system that operates in a certain way. And with that being the case, there are certain nutritional foundations that apply across the board when it comes to our blood sugar regulation, when it comes to digestion, when it comes to your mineral balance, your fatty acids, just to name a few. I take a foundational approach to nutrition and to health as a whole, holistic and foundational approach. And so ultimately what that means is we're looking at how is your body designed to function? How does that system operate? Essentially, where is a breakdown happening? Especially if I'm working with a client, we're going to identify where a breakdown in that system is happening. And then we're going to take efforts to reestablish, restore homeostasis and get things back in alignment. And that is where those foundations come from. So all of this goes to say this isn't one size fits all. There are different things that are going to work better for different people. However, we still have the consistent underpinning of these foundations that are what contribute to a thriving and healthy metabolism and body as a whole. So that's where I'm coming from. Now let's dive into it. So the first thing that I see people doing that really sabotages their success in transitioning to a pro-metabolic lifestyle is going to be going too hard, too fast. And interestingly enough, I think this is really, really common because especially for people who are coming out of more of a diet culture space, and I would say just like mentally, I am very similar. Tend to be like an all or nothing kind of person. Maybe you've tried a bunch of things and you are just ready to find something that works. Whether that's from diet culture or just temperamentally. I see a lot of women, especially who come in, it's like the very type A personality. Like I want to do everything. I want to do it all overnight. And that doesn't work. That doesn't work because that's not how your hormones work. And if you go from, for instance, let's just talk about exercise. If you go from exercising intensely, like doing HIIT 5 days a week, to all of a sudden you're doing yoga and 2 days a week and walking every day, essentially you're going to have a ton of excess cortisol that your body does not have an outlet for. It doesn't know what to do with because it's completely breaking up how your body is cycling. And so while ideally over time we might be shifting our exercise to be gentler, to be more supportive, and while that is beneficial to your metabolism, if we do that all really hard, really fast at one time, you're just gonna have all of this cortisol swimming around that can make you feel really sick, can cause some really nasty symptoms, exacerbate problems you're already having because it doesn't have its normal outlet to get out. And the same goes with making big dietary changes because, and this is going to be another point that I'll discuss in a minute, but your digestion needs time to adjust. And especially if you haven't been eating one food group or another, especially one macronutrient, like if you've been really high carb and not eating a lot of protein, or if you have been really high fat, high protein, not eating a lot of carbs, introducing that other macronutrient back in large quantities, right off the bat probably won't work because your digestion isn't primed to handle it. And so there's work that needs to be done on the deeper digestive level to get your body in a place where it can handle making those changes. And so when you add everything at one time, it just essentially puts your body into shock, and you can't absorb the nutrients from the foods you're eating, no matter how nutrient dense they are. Your body can't assimilate that quickly, and therefore you see a lot of really negative symptoms sometimes that come with it. And so my biggest piece of advice, having a difficult time talking today. My biggest piece of advice for anybody who is interested in adopting a more metabolically supported lifestyle is to take it one step at a time. Like for instance, every week, just choose one thing you're going to begin to implement. And 1 week might actually be too fast for some things. For instance, with exercise, if you're trying to transition your exercise routine, let's continue with that example of doing 5 days of HIIT per week. Maybe you start by swapping out one of those days 1 week. And then the next week you swap out another one of those days. And I'm not saying all high intensity exercise is bad. There's definitely a place for it. I've done other videos breaking that down, so feel free to check those out. Those are just my example. This is just my example for the time being. Don't remove it all in 1 week or 2 weeks. Try cycling 1 day out at a time. If it's dietary, maybe you are slowly reintroducing carbohydrates into your diet. If you've been low carb, maybe you add, it just depends on how extreme you've been restricting, but maybe you're introducing as little as like 10 grams per week. Or if you're trying to raise your protein 5 to 10 grams per week. If you go too hard too fast, your body is not going to be able to digest it. Okay, I think I've beat that horse enough. So let's move on to the next point, and that is digestive dysfunction. And as you can kind of already tell, this ties into the previous point because I was talking about how your body needs time to adjust to different foods that you're introducing. But this can be more extreme in some cases than others. So for instance, if you have a difficult time, or if you are struggling, if your gut lining is struggling, there we go. If you are experiencing what we call increased intestinal permeability, which is very common, unfortunately, and therefore you are reacting to different foods, reacting because, this is a little tangent, but reacting because parts of food are getting into your bloodstream, essentially very small parts of your body is creating antibodies to them, and you're having a reaction. If you have that going on and you're reacting to things like gluten, things like dairy, it could be any number of things, but those are two of the most common reactions we see. If you don't do the work to heal your gut before reintroducing those foods, you are going to be in an incredibly reactive state. And most likely, if you have been eating a diet that has not been mineral rich and has not been supportive of your overall digestive health, it is going to take some time to get your digestion to a place where it can handle some of the foods that you're going to be eating with this more metabolically supportive diet. And so that's something I work a ton with clients one-on-one with. You are more than welcome to reach out. You can shoot me an email or just fill out the application that is on my website. But this is something I work a ton with people on, is healing their digestion so that they are able to eat foods without reacting. And it can start with something as simple as just increasing your hydrochloric acid production. That's also a big one when it comes to our ability to digest and handle protein. If people haven't been eating meat for a long time, and they think, oh, I don't feel good when I eat meat. Well, that's probably because you don't have maybe enough hydrochloric acid or maybe enough of the enzymes that digest protein specifically. And we need to do the work to increase those levels so that you can then digest protein and get those nutrients. So number 1 was going too hard, too fast. Number 2 was digestion. And number 3 is macronutrient ratios. So something I have seen way too many times is people get excited about raw dairy. And don't get me wrong, I love raw dairy, or just, well-sourced, high-quality dairy across the board. But what people do is they will start adding it in the form of a ton of heavy cream, and maybe they're making like an egg yolk coffee and it's like a cup of raw milk, and they're adding, or maybe there's not even coffee in it, either way, a cup of raw milk, an egg yolk, and like 2 tablespoons or more of heavy cream, and they're eating this every day. So first of all of a sudden you are eating way more fat than you have previously been eating. Second of all, you're probably, because you're eating way more fat than you've previously been eating, if you're not adjusting other aspects of your diet, you're eating way more calories than you have probably been eating. And therefore, a very common thing people will see with this is unnecessary weight gain. Sometimes there is necessary weight gain involved in the healing and adjusting process when it comes to your metabolism. However, a lot of it can be avoided with just being mindful of your macronutrients. And while we want to be eating those nourishing fats, not just adding them into everything, because those calories add up really, really quickly. Also, tying this back to the digestion piece, if all of a sudden you are adding a ton more fat in your diet and your body isn't able to break it down, for instance, you're not producing enough bile, which is another very common thing that I see and work with clients on, that fat is going to make you feel incredibly nauseous. You are not going to be able to tolerate it. Your bowel movements are going to be all messed up, and it's just going to be wacky. So that's one instance in which macronutrients can be out of whack, and you can end up eating a lot more calories than you necessarily even realize you can. Another thing is that people often are not eating as much protein as they think they are. And protein is really, really essential for so many functions, but one in particular is going to be satiety, managing your satiety. And that again ties into the unnecessary weight gain piece, but also just keeping yourself feeling good, keeping yourself feeling energized. You have to have enough protein. And then on the flip side, something that I myself has encountered when I was increasing my protein content, increasing my fat content, is my appetite actually kind of drastically decreased. And in a way, this was very good because it's, at an appropriate level. It was just more decreased from where it was, which I would say was ravenous. However, I found myself just not eating enough carbohydrates. And so you have to keep them all in check. Like, I'll work with people to increase their protein intake, but sometimes when they do that, then they're not eating enough carbohydrates. And then you find yourself without enough energy to, perform well in the gym or things like that. Again, just one example. And so I noticed, okay, I have really increased my protein. I prefer to eat higher protein and higher fat and a little bit lower carb, but there'd be days when I'd realize, oh my gosh, I've had like 30 to 50 grams of carbohydrates. No wonder I don't have the energy I need to do this, exercise or this task, for instance. So macronutrients are a big thing. I work with all of my clients to make sure that we have their macronutrients balanced well from the get-go. There's usually adjustment with that because, again, each person is going to be different, and depending on your lifestyle factors, your ideal macronutrient ratios are going to be different. But that's it for today. I hope that this was clear enough. I know it was a little bit circuitous. I was trying to kind of connect the different points. So if you have any questions, please do just comment them below. I will see you next week with that foam rolling tutorial and so much more awesome, fun content coming out soon. Please don't forget to like this video, hit that subscribe button, and until next time.